We are live again in House Transportation on Wednesday afternoon, March 18th. Marching to the end of the T-bill. Legislative Council is going to bring us back to version 5.1 of the mileage-based user fee. We had some corrections from the last time we met. We're looking to see if we are ready for finalized language to move over to the T-bill. It's all yours.
Oh, sorry, I just realized I clicked the wrong Zoom meeting link, so I'll be in.
Going to education.
I clicked Gabby's link instead of the Matt's link. I think. Wrong one again. Sorry about that. There we go. All right. That's the one. House education.
House education. House education, house transportation, Wednesday afternoon. TikTok.
All right. Yes. Okay. Pulling the draft back up here for the record again, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. We left off on bottom of page 7. This is the refund provision for the assessments. Upon occurrence of a terminating event, the commissioner shall issue a refund for any amounts paid by an owner or lessee that are in excess of the amount due pursuant to this chapter. So that captures both the assessments and any interest on past due amounts, etc.
Patrick, comments from the agency? You're comfortable with this language?
Yes.
Anybody have any questions about it? Okay. Thank you for your work and for matching up what we're looking for. Let's go to the next one.
Next one, this is in the interest. Page 8, the maximum amount of interest that may accrue pursuant to this subsection shall not exceed 18% of the amount of the unpaid fee. So in other words, you're capped at 1 year.
Okay. Does that capture what you were?
Yeah, no, perfect.
Would the agency like to make any comment on that? Are we in agreement with that language? Represent what?
So we also had a section about interests of 1.5%.
That's the preceding sentence. So it's 1.5% per month. The maximum amount.
So the 1.5, which is multiplied by 12.
Yeah, comes out to 18. Yeah. Okay. One thing that had come up in the meeting I had with Logan and Patrick on Monday that I forgot to mention in the prior walkthrough was that there wasn't a time around when the failure to file the report or have the electric vehicle inspected. So I've added this language bracketed because you haven't considered it, but it would basically say within a reasonable period of time after the report or inspection is due, allowing the commissioner to give folks some sort of grace period. So I had a note in there to mention grace period and I missed it, or mention the possibility of a grace period. I missed it during this morning's walkthrough. So this doesn't have to go in, but it does provide some leeway for the commissioner.
Is reasonable period defined in statute?
It's not. That would be up to the commissioner to determine what a reasonable period is. In other unpaid fee instances, it's been set at the commissioner is currently operating at 30 days. So that's for if you bounce a check on your registration or something like that. They give you 30 days to correct the error. Yep.
Any concerns?
No, I think that seems reasonable. I mean, I don't know, maybe, I'm supposed to get my car inspected, but living in another state for 6 months, going to school, I don't know. And then, you could say, oh, wait, no, I'll get it done. Yeah.
Any concerns? Okay. We're good.
Okay. The next is just a section change because we deleted all of the collection. The court, tax lien and the collection agency provisions. The next change after that adds is the rework transition provision. So there are two versions here. In talking to Patrick after you all adjourned at lunchtime, I realized that I may have not have captured the agency's intent. So there's a version here that captures what they had suggested better, and then the prorated language we talked about. So I put both out there for your consideration. So the prorated language would provide for both of them, it's transition into the mileage-based reporting fee or mileage-based user fee and it would commence your first mileage reporting period at your first annual inspection after January 1, 2027. And then the question really is, how are you credited? The agency's proposal was that you would receive a flat credit equal to $89 towards the first initial mileage reporting period. I had it set up as different instances when you would receive a credit or not. The language we discussed this morning is what I'm highlighting now, which is a prorated credit based on the number of months in the reporting period that are covered by the most recent annual infrastructure fee paid by the owner or lessee pursuant to the registration statute. So that essentially says how many months are within this period and are already covered. So, and there, in this case, you won't have anyone being overcharged with either instance. With the flat fee, you may have some folks who get a little bit of a lesser charge when they transition in. So that, but the flip side of that is that it's administratively easier for the agency. So, but those are the two different options. And whatever the committee wants to proceed with, or if something different altogether, I can make those changes.
Yeah, I think we've, made it fair with both of these options, and my understanding, the administration would prefer the simpler one that might give somebody a little extra credit for a couple months, but it would be easier to, and I think easier to explain too, so. With that, I'm happy with both. I'm certainly happy with what the administration is looking to do. And this is just a temporary thing, and within a couple of years, we'll be out of this. So as simple as possible, as easy to explain as possible. It's already going to be a challenge to explain to EV owners what a mileage-based user fee is and how it works. So I'm okay with that.
Both of these only apply to the initial mileage reporting period. After that, there's no credit after that.
Anybody else? We're good.
What's the committee's preference?
Say, and make a motion that it's the administration's language to simplify this transition period.
Bless you, and all in favor of that, then that's the direction you want to go? Okay. Here's your instructions, sir.
Okay, that is it for the changes in mileage-based user fee.
I mean, that section gets a number now or whatever.
Those sections can now get a number if you move them into the T-bill.
Are there any other questions or comments or concerns about mileage-based user fee language? Does the agency have any more on that?
I make a motion to include the language in front of us for the inbox. We include it in their translation.
All those in favor of moving the MBUF language into the bill? All those opposed? You are so instructed. Okay.
Okay, I'll move over to the T-bill. Next.
They're dropped online.
The updated. So the draft we were just looking at for the MBUF was 5.1. It should be posted. And then the T-bill draft is should be 3.3, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And this doesn't have the MBUF in it yet, but once these changes get the thumbs up, I can move in the MBUF. I'll make a draft 4.1, which you can then vote, assuming there are no other additions or changes. So the first changes on this bill are just adding in transportation alternatives, speed limits, and Drive Electric Vermont to the subject listing.
Oops, I'm sorry, can you back, I just want to make sure,
Sure.
I'm not, where does the Caledonia, where's the airport extension language in that list of
Ooh.
things?
It's Caledonia. Hold on a sec here.
Is it covered by one of the other?
Caledonia Airport is not in this draft. Let me add that. Thank you.
Or welcome.
I missed that being added.
I know that most people don't think I'm paying attention. Certainly the ghosts and the ether spirits of the world think that I have no idea what I'm doing. I just like to pretend once in a while. I appreciate the setup on that one.
All right.
You need a minute, I don't mind covering something else. Or not.
That's
It's
okay.
fun to work in public, I know that. Although you do it all the time, so. You're very good at it.
I still turn bright red, but all right, let me pull the draft back up and so we've got Caledonia County State Airport added to the list of subjects. Let me just go through section by section. That way we can ensure I haven't left anything out. And if there is something that the committee voted to put in that I've missed, just let me know.
I think we should, I know we, straight through is okay. We haven't seen the Drive Electric. Let's get to that one first. And then come back through the sections, but we haven't seen that language. If I imagine it's not very long, but we haven't actually seen that one, so we didn't look at it before we moved it in here. Sorry, process wise.
That's okay. So this is based on the Drive Electric language we used last year in the transportation bill. This would appropriate the sum of $292,000 from the transportation fund to the agency to support the continuation of the agency's partnership with Drive Electric. The money shall be used for programs and activities that support increased ownership and use of plug-in electric vehicles in the state through stakeholder coordination, consumer education and outreach, infrastructure development, and the provision of technical assistance and support to Vermont municipalities and businesses desiring to electrify their vehicle fleets. This is, apart from the appropriation amount and where the money is coming from, this is a cut and paste from last year. So,
which is basically the same thing we did last year. Okay.
yeah, and in prior years before that as well. So, yeah.
Are there any concerns, comments, questions? Is that what we were trying to do? Representative Byrd?
Good to me.
Okay, any other comments?
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you, but the only, I guess, comment that I would have is, should we swap the funds that fund this from the MBUF? And then take these funds and then put it towards whatever we want to do with the towns. just because you get in the argument with pilot funds, should we be funding driver electric? Is it more in tune with the MBUF funds or more in tune with the pilot funds, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay, what you're,
Is the drive electric more in tune with?
Yeah, well, this is a driver electric, the question is what pot of money should we fund this with? And I'm thinking it should be the part of the 500,000, 400,000 as
because
opposed
those are
to.
electric vehicles.
Because those are electric vehicles as opposed to the pilot funds, then you get in the argument, it should go back to towns. We'll say, all right, we're gonna put it back to town, we're gonna give it to.
The fact that it means more work and a delay really bothers me, but your logic is certainly more
I just don't wanna get in the argument
more
saying,
clear.
what do you
that
do?
we have a
Yeah,
mileage-based user fee coming from electric vehicles, and we're gonna use some of that money
Yeah.
to a fund,
yeah,
drive electric activity.
Yeah.
We had pilot money that didn't get paid back, and because it didn't get paid back, we want to put it on the town highways.
highways, yeah,
I certainly see that connection much straighter than crisscrossing them,
yeah.
but.
I don't know if that's a lot of work, I mean, I just.
Go ahead, Representative Couch.
I think that makes total sense,
Yeah.
but the timing is not the same. So the Drive Electric runs out in September. And those MBUF funds aren't gonna be ready till the end of, into 2027.
So I can speak to that. Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation. Because the funds will be collected in 27 and they'll be allocated to something in 27, that works. The actual movement of money is less of a concern because we deal with that with cash flow all the time across different programs. So I think that's okay, yeah.
So it would be okay what corporate is saying?
Yeah,
And
so I think what he's saying is you would use the pilot money for the towns. You would use the first 325 of any MBUF funds, and then the balance of any MBUF funds would then go back to the towns as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I know you're sticking with the governor position.
I mean,
But yeah, so I just, I mean, it's clear, I don't know, we don't have to go down this path, I just think it avoids a potential argument saying, you know. You're taking funds from the locals to fund drive electric. Then they would be opposed to that.
The logic makes
Yeah.
it makes sense. Also, if we put the $100,000 that's shorted by the change in mileage-based user fee out of that, then we're
Yeah.
pretty well to our number.
Yeah.
so, from a drafting standpoint, you don't actually need to change
Because the language doesn't identify.
it just says transportation fund. If you want to be clear where the money's coming from, you can add a paragraph at the end of the mileage-based user fee that says allocation of funds from mileage-based user fee collected in fiscal year 2027, and just say the first $325,000 mileage-based user fee shall be allocated to the Drive Electric Vermont and
No, it's
any
not
balance,
325.
or 292. Sorry, there's two numbers going around. And that's last year's number.
Yeah,
The first 292 would be allocated to Drive Electric Vermont, and any amounts over and above that would be allocated to the transportation fund for other purposes.
or the short, yeah.
But you don't actually need the language in here. Unless you want to call it out.
Well, I mean, it's gotta be identified somewhere in the appropriations budget, doesn't it?
It all goes into the transportation fund. So the transportation fund is made up of motor vehicle purchase and use,
All right, if you don't get identified.
gas,
then
and so
that's-
forth. Yeah.
This is good.
But you can,
But when we present it, we may want to be
Yeah,
clear.
you can present that this is, money that will be additional money that's coming
That
in.
makes me feel a whole lot better about it.
Yeah.
Really, I know it
Right.
sounds silly, but it does make me feel a whole lot better as somebody who voted against it. It's coming from electric vehicles to support electric vehicle activity. I feel a lot better about it than where I was 2 seconds ago, even though I still don't, and.
No, you don't like it.
I still voted no, but at least it's putting the money from the place where you're getting the money.
Yeah.
And the logic is certainly stronger. Representative Powell?
And then the other, so some of the money's coming from the MBUF. And then the other money that's coming, that's still there, coming to us that we sort of discovered. And is that in the bill too, saying that?
That's not in the bill. It's in the,
And we know the money's there.
It's allocated in, it's embedded in the budget that was presented. It was a payback to reimburse the fund.
Yeah.
right. So one of the things that's happening here is in the transportation bill, the T-bill, we approve how the money is going to be spent. The actual accounting occurs in the big bill. Similar to what happens in the capital bill, where you're approving how the money is going to be spent. But for the most part, the appropriations and the accounting for where the money is coming from all occurs in the big bill.
But typically, you still have to address the pockets. We're gonna have to reduce that line item, wherever it is, we have to identify that this line item is no longer gonna be directed towards, like I said, am I incorrect, Michelle, that we have to identify where that's embedded to say this is where you're drawing it from?
Well, yeah, so if we're, sorry,
Yeah.
the question's for you, Michelle.
I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah,
To be honest.
In past years, when we're shifting around the money, so
Yeah,
whatever your budget is, if you shift $500,000 from maintenance to town highways or something like that, you reduce the amount for town highways by $500,000 and increase the amount or increase the amount for town highways and reduce maintenance.
yeah.
We've always,
And you do that. In this case, I think we're talking about two pots of money that I'm not sure if they're
We haven't
in
programmed.
they're not programmed into the budget. So the
Oh.
292 is additional money that was supposed to be paid back to the pilot fund,
Yeah.
but is no longer being paid back. So it's not programmed in. And then the other pot is potentially an additional 500,000 that is not
That's
programmed.
clear. Okay, that's-
So, yeah.
We don't need it.
Yeah, if anything, you could potentially see program changes to shift money around and put a little more money in places, but you may not want to rely on some of these amounts this year and instead do carry forward a budget adjustment when they're more sure. So, but that's what typically has happened in the past, is when we're moving program allocations around, that's when we account for it in the T-bill.
Okay, well, the language doesn't identify the money.
Yeah, it just says transportation fund. It's the giant pot. It doesn't identify which revenue stream to the transportation fund is being
When
tapped.
it comes back in, we'll have him comment as well.
Okay.
Because that pot, whatever it is now grown by a little bit because it's grown
Let's see.
by a little bit.
Here.
Okay, I guess we're stuck at this one. Move to the next one.
No, I think we're fine, yeah, because we don't really need to change that, because it doesn't.
That language doesn't
Yeah,
identify a pot.
yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't identify the revenue stream.
Yeah.
It identifies the pot.
Could add,
There's a
like I
lot.
said, make clear that we are taking it from. We're not taking it from the pilot fund, but it's not even embedded in there, so you can't really address it.
Yeah,
It's a little bit unique in that way.
it really becomes a question of, do you want to call out where you're allocating the money from, even though it's blended, the money gets blended when it goes into the T fund, and then will come out for all the different things you've called out. But you can say we're allocating these revenues for this purpose. But it'll still be the same pot of money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All right, let's move.
Okay, I'll go back to the beginning. So section 1 is the adoption of the transportation program. There is one change in here. I've taken out the definition of mileage-based user fee because we define it in the mileage-based user fee program and nowhere else. So that's been pulled out. Yeah, so that's that. Section 2 as a reminder to everyone, this is the old rules for the Municipal Heavy Equipment Loan Fund, which used to be administered by the, I believe, the Transportation Committee. It is long, for several years now, been administered by the Treasurer's Office and has a different name now. And so these rules were left on the books. And the thinking had been that there were some updates to the statute in last year's big bill that they thought had repealed the rules, but they hadn't done that. And so this is just cleaning up and getting those rules off the books.
And back on February 27th, we went through it and checked it all off as the committee thumbed it up, the whole section. Okay.
Next is the section 3 goes into the state standards and guidance for design of highways, and it's a technical change clarifying appropriate warning signs, signals, and markings instead of provided appropriate warnings are posted. Essentially, this is when you have a lower speed curve or section of road on a road where the speed limit is otherwise set at a higher rate. You know, so think of your 20-mile-an-hour turn when you're on a 45-mile-an-hour road.
And again, on the 27th, we checked it off. We thumbs up it as a group already.
Yep.
Next is the duties of AOT with respect to bonding of contractors. The first is a bond to ensure that the contractor complies with the statutory terms, or not the statutory terms, the contractual terms. And this increases the amount below, or the contract size below which the secretary can waive the bonding requirements from 100,000 to 250,000, and gives the secretary authority to waive the bonding requirement for emergency stabilization work during an emergency event. And then requires that any permanent work to repair the damage done during that event would still be subject to the bonding requirements.
It impacts about a dozen vendors a year per major event, or dozen per major event, not per year. There's about a dozen vendors that were impacted during major events, is what the average is. We did also check that one off as one that we've been through back in February.
Yep. And then the next half of that is the surety bond, which is the bond for
Okay.
that's okay. Same thing. It's the bond for payment of taxes, unemployment insurance, that sort of thing pursuant to the contract. And it's the same provision, $250,000 floor below which the secretary can waive the requirements, and the same emergency allowance to waive the requirements. The next is bridge inspections, posting, and closure. This is the language to bring the state in compliance with the federal national bridge inspection standards as far as bridge inspections. So the agency inspects all state and municipal bridges. The agency can advise the municipality of its findings, notify the municipality if a bridge needs to be posted or closed, and has emergency posting and closure authority, but the municipality remains responsible for the costs related to the bridge. And then for state maintained bridges, agency has the sole responsibility to determine whether a bridge is posted or closed, except in an emergency when the municipality can do it. And otherwise, the municipality informs the state if they become aware of deficient conditions. And the agency is responsible for those costs. And then there's a penalty for violating a posting or closure of $1,000, of up to $1,000. That's in addition to the other overweight, over height, over length, and other road closure penalties if you violate those provisions.
That is a new penalty that did not exist prior to this T-bill. We are creating a new penalty there. When we come out to report it, that'll be a significant notation. We checked that off as well.
And section 6 is just clarifying that that's a traffic violation for purposes of Title 23 and otherwise making technical changes. Section 7 adjusts the membership of the Public Transit Advisory Council to include AARP in place of the Community of Vermont Elders, which has been dissolved, to remove the representative of private bus operators and taxi services, and replace the representative of Vermont intercity operators with private bus operators.
Testimony on that, and you checked it all with the AARP. Remember those ladies? Oh, yes.
I'd be very nitpicky, but wouldn't it be the ninth member would be the representative from private bus operators if the previous ninth was repealed?
It,
I mean, it's just like a numbering. I don't know. It's what
it could be either. But yeah, in this case, the wish was to have Vermont private bus operators called out in the proposed language. And so I struck number 9 rather than adding in Vermont, and then kept 10 there. The list goes on after 10.
Okay.
So this happens periodically where we just delete a member of a board.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, what it does in the green books is it just shows up as a list, and in the middle of the list, it says repealed and then goes on with the list.
Oh.
So I agree, it doesn't look great, but it's,
Not of a lot of consequence. I just.
yeah. The other option is to renumber the list. I like to leave it with a repealed note so that folks, if they're interested in who used to be appointed, can go back and look to see what the changes were. So that's the historian in me. Green Mountain Transit Authority with the annual budget and assessments in section 8. This is allowing them to include anticipated voluntary local match contributions, grants, donations, and other non-assessment revenues that may be offered by a member municipality or another public or private source, and to seek and accept those contributions, and to provide that guidance around how those contributions can be used for purposes of meeting match requirements or supporting programs or projects and operations. And then providing that that does not change the assessment formula if you get a local match contribution.
We didn't finish out 8 and 9 and then add the new languages, or like the public-private partnership.
Public-private partnership is
We
further
extended
down.
the sunset on,
That's further down.
okay, it was originally section 8, that's all
It's section 9 now.
oh, okay, we just
Um,
put Green Mountain Transit in between them. That's the language from, okay,
yeah, I think,
just making sure that we didn't lose the old 8 and the old 9. We didn't.
what do you have listed as the old 8 and 9?
We did not remove the sunset.
No.
We extended the sunset to give them more time to do that. That
Yeah.
was section 8 right after the public transit council. So I see you put public transit right in right after them. And I'm assuming then if you flip down, section 9 will be
Yep.
section 9 will now be the sunset.
Yep, there it is.
I was
Yeah,
checking, so
not sure.
thumbed up the Green Mountain language to go in. We hadn't actually seen it in here. It's section 7 now. Okay. I'm good now. I'm assuming that also what was section 9, the Transportation Board of Powers and Duties is now
No,
section
section
10. Okay, and they're both been checked off. I just want to make sure. I thought we were going to do them all and then add on, but that's okay, as long as they're in there. Huh?
Yeah, I guess I added it in the middle. I'm not sure why
Not a problem.
that happened, but that was a couple drafts ago for me.
The Green Mountain Transit language is the language that we had reviewed already, and back on February 18th, we thumbed it up to go in here. Is what I recall for notes. I don't know if anybody has any other different view or consent or issue on that. But I'm just following my notes of when we put it up, and now I'm good.
Okay,
Was expecting it to be 10 or 11, but I'm good. I know where we're going. Thank
all
you.
right. Section 9 is that extension of the sunset on the Public-Private Partnership Authority from this coming July 1 to July 1, 2029. Section 10 is the Transportation Board duties. We're clarifying that appeals of an 1111 permit can be made by an applicant or permittee. So it's limiting those appeals. And essentially adjoiners who would be appealing the 1111 permit have other avenues through the land use and zoning process. And so this is focusing the 1111 permit appeals on issues related to that rather than to a larger zoning dispute between neighbors. Okay. And that brings us to section 11, which is the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. This language is new to this draft, but identical to what you approved. So it increases the ongoing grant amount to a maximum of $600,000. It takes out the 50% set aside for environmental mitigation projects, while still calling out that eligible activities include environmental mitigation projects like salt and sand sheds and infrastructure related projects and systems that will provide safe routes for non-drivers. And then in section 12, providing a 1 year for this coming fiscal year increase in the maximum grant amount to 1.2 million. Okay. Section 13 is the consultation regarding municipal programs that we reviewed, I think, earlier today. This is in addition to the ongoing work on the inventory of municipal roads, the agency in consultation with the League and the Association of Planning and Development Agencies would continue examining requirements related to cancellation of locally managed projects, continue evaluating the state, town, highway aid and municipal grant programs to identify potential efficiencies, and examine provisions of the Vermont statutes related to the procedures for establishing speed limits, and identify potential opportunities to simplify and clarify those provisions to assist municipalities in meeting local needs, including safety and context sensitivity, and then on or before January 15th of next year, submitting any recommendations for legislative action to this committee and its Senate counterpart. Okay. Pilot Special Fund is section 14. This is and 15. This is the language we looked at this morning, which provides for local option tax, if local option tax revenues exceed the amount of pilot fund, grand list stabilization, correctional facility payments, plus any amounts appropriated from the pilot fund to the Department of Taxes for expenses related to grand list and appraisal assistance. 1/2 of the excess. Oh, there is a typo. There we go. 1/2 of the excess amount shall be transferred to the transportation fund in the next fiscal year and allocated to general state aid for town highways. So just realized we had repetitive language that didn't match up, but just updated it. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, can we get back?
Yeah, I apologize.
Section?
I bumped the wrong button.
So, Representative Burt, did you have a comment on this piece from what we were breaking earlier?
Bit of confusion about what we're talking about. It was the money that was going to be used for.
In the pilot fund right now, $3.4 million was in the governor's recommended budget And from what we understand, also worked through Ways and Means, and the House Appropriations is working through them, along with the governor's recommend to spend $3.4 million on grand list stabilization out of the current surplus in the pilot, both for this current year and next
Current
year.
Surplus and
There
take some of it off.
yes, 3.4
Here's the
million
surplus.
this year and next year
You're using that money. Okay.
for grand list stabilization, as they call it, I believe. We had originally asked for, we're going in direction of 50% over the surplus, naming just the specific pilot items, but because the deal is so far on, we're recognizing the reality that that 3.4 million is going to be not there. And so our chance for money would be on money after the expense. So pilot fund, and that's where I would say that's.
On some of the pilots.
Pilot fund does not include a spot in the current language, in the current law. It does not mean that you can use pilot funds for grand list stabilization. But our understanding, we heard testimony that people didn't think that was a good idea, but it's in the governor's recommend, and it's working with the House Appropriations and Ways and Means, but that is money that is gonna happen, even if some people believe that's not an appropriate use of pilot. We're not entering that battle by putting this language in. We are not fighting on that $3.4 million. We're not fighting for a share of that. We're acknowledging that as an expense.
Somebody
We
else
are
can pay
fighting.
for it.
We are fighting, and we may, or some individually may or may not, but the committee is not. And maybe all of us would fight for it separately, but in the committee as a whole is by putting that language in saying, we're not fighting for that 3.4 million against the governor's recommend. We're fighting for half of the annual amount that's over what's required for expenses, this being a now required
Have to be distributed to all the towns.
to then be put through the town highway formula.
I guess,
And so the league, if I could go a little further, they were entirely on board where we were heading until we acknowledged that deal. That is potentially, that they're vehemently opposing and potentially even putting out alerts against. Which that's not for us to, or that's not what we're involved in, but that's what I've heard since we wrote that. They're no longer supporting this language because we are moved in not fighting that portion.
they feel that we shouldn't be taking any money from the towns.
Without speaking for them, that's what I interpreted from their.
All right, yeah, I understand.
And what I would say is that we as a committee are still unified in fighting for money for town highways any way we can get it. I think that would be part of what we're trying to present as a message. Now, that would be substantially more if this wasn't, if they didn't take that pilot money. But we're saying as a committee, we're reading what's out there and saying, we're gonna fight for what we think we can get. Or that's possible. The league is saying we should fight for it all. We're making a decision. to Fight for height. Am I
No,
carrying this on too far?
no, that's exactly right. I mean, it's, yeah, just to reiterate, is that if there was some type of inclination that we were gonna get that this wasn't kosher, we would have started moving out of Ways and Means or appropriations. So I think the writing's on the wall, and everybody's, I think this is gonna happen. You know, 3.4, at least the town doesn't think it's gonna happen, but that's not our fight. Our fight is trying to make our best argument of why we should get the balance, so.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
I might have better know what there were many, anyway.
Well, how you position, how you vote always matters too.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I'm glad that I, there's always that thing when something's happening, it's moving really fast, and like, don't really get there in time to say, wait a minute, stop, explain.
I would suspect there are people that left the conversation very disappointed and the decision very disappointed this morning. I, however, will say that I appreciate the uniform view of committee to fight for town highway and structure and town aid wherever we can. It's not, incremental changes, I guess, is what we're trying to do, but realistic. I'm just repeating myself, I guess.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on.
Right, section 15 adds the language which would spend that money in the general state aid for town highways program as an additional amount on top of the base appropriation there, not subject to the inflator, not affecting the amount of the base appropriation. So in years where there is a surplus there, that extra money goes into the amount that's set up for that program. So the way it works is at the end of the fiscal year, whatever the excess is, half of that goes to next year's state aid for town highways on top of the base appropriation. So it may only be a few tens of thousands of dollars in the near term, but it could grow. And so it'll go on top of that amount. Questions on that? Okay, section 16 is the Drive Electric Vermont language we just looked at. And Logan pointed out to me that we should say in state fiscal year 2027, the sum of, so. Yes, this is a one-time amount, so. This is gonna, assuming things go as they normally do down in appropriations, this will get pulled out and put in the appropriations bill anyway. Or the big bill, so. And then that brings us to the effective date, but at this point, if everything else is okay, I will insert the MBUF language and the Caledonia Airport. Is there anything else that's missing?
Slope options, mileage-based user fee, Drive Electric. On my other list was Caledonia. Sure about this.
Well, just the MBUF, you
Oh, the
know.
MBUF is not in there yet, and,
Well, I mean, the MBUF, the excess fund.
oh, the MBUF, so what are we gonna do? Logan didn't come back yet, why don't we?
Isn't bad, but it's
All right,
not
let's-
great.
You're still in the mix, which means this story.
Sorry about that.
That's the last issue then.
Yeah.
And so we're going to, I think at this point, we're gonna break for 5 to 10 minutes and find out where Logan is and see whether we can come up with a recommendation agreement of pushing this last piece in the last.
What are we waiting for Logan for?
I'm curious about his opinion on this, whether we should or shouldn't have the amounts noted and whether they should or shouldn't notate the funds. I'd like to
Okay.
hear from JFO. on
I'm
that.
still, I mean, I know what David said, but it's weird that you don't identify it. Yeah.
Well, I wanna hear that.
Yeah.
I wanna make sure we're good there, and I want him to have a chance to put the language in, and then I wanna be able to print a full piece, and the last thing to decide is, are we doing this money or not? We didn't vote on that. And so I wanna hear from Logan on those pieces. So we're taking